So we can start. It's 10:30.
So good morning, everyone, and we are starting sharp at 10:30 as promised. Welcome to our session on capacity building, an important aspect of evaluation ecosystem. I hope I'm audible and the screen is visible for everyone. Great. So I think I'd like to begin with just sharing a few reflections of my own as we begin to discuss capacity building within the evaluation ecosystem in India. 7 years ago, when I started my career in the development sector research, I knew nothing about evaluation, what it means, why is it important, and what are the opportunities and networks in the field. I got introduced to the field in a very ad hoc manner by learning on the job, by attending workshops and blended learning courses, attending conferences and conclaves. It was not something that was taught at the university. The downside of not having a very robust and, more importantly, coherent capacity building framework within India's evaluation ecosystem has also meant that the existing and contextualized knowledge is not well documented enough. In fact, this is something that is already much talked about in the last 2 decades, how the literature and frameworks for evaluation are largely produced by Global North because of the paradigm of donors funding projects in Global South and looking to evaluate as an accountability measure. In this context, professionalization of evaluation in India and integration of evaluative thinking in program and policy cycle, which is still evolving, needs a lot of discussion. These evolving blocks need various types of evaluation capacities, both vertically and horizontally. It is important to break down what we mean by professionalization and capacity building, and it is important to discuss and reflect on the existing initiatives taken in this direction. With this context setting, a little bit of context setting, I'd like to introduce today's speakers for this panel. And we have a very eminent panel with us today. We have Mr. Aniruddha Brahmachari, who's the head of operations at lead at Kriya University and has more than 20 years of experience in the field. Previously, he was the global MEL officer with Oxfam International and has co-edited 3 books on evaluation. We also have with us Rashmi Agrawal. Rashmi ji is the co-founder and co-leader of Evaluation Community of India, or ECOI, who are also the host for this session. She has a PhD in psychology from Lucknow University, and she's also an M&E graduate from Carleton University, Canada. Rashmi ji has over 30 years of experience in the field and is a part of various board member of various councils and organizations. Next up, we have Rajib Nandi, who has more than 24 years of experience in research and program design and in gender transformative evaluation and development evaluation. Since 2015, he has taken up a major role in spearheading the voluntary organization for professional evaluation movement in India for developing the evaluation ecosystem. He's also the co-founder and co-leader of ECOI and a member of governing board of the Community of Evaluators, South Asia. Currently, he's working as Vice President Sambodhi. And finally, we have with us Yatin Diwakar, who is the co-group member of ECOI and co-founder and co-leader of Evaluate India. Previously, he was also the co-leader of Evaluate Asia and organized the Winter School. Currently, he's a doctoral student at IIT Mumbai. Before I hand over the stage to our speakers, just a couple of quick ground rules for today. Each speaker will get 7 to 8 minutes for their presentation. Everyone's presentation at the end will be followed by a round of discussion and questions. All participants are requested to keep their audio and video off, but please post your questions in the chat box and we will pick up questions from the chat box for the speakers. With that, I would like to hand over the stage to Mr. Aniruddha Brahmachari.
Thank you, Mahima. Thank you for such a nice opening, setting the ground rules and such nice background. When we are talking about this session, we were thinking that how shall we frame it, but this whole framing is about the capacity building. So how does this professionalization come into the picture? Because there is a very deep connect between professionalization and capacity building. In the last few years, across the world, there have been various efforts in making evaluation as a visible and very concrete area of professional work or a professional stream. There have been various processes across the world. It has also been in the UN system that the various efforts have been made. But interestingly, all these efforts within the UN system, the INGO world or the VOPEs have been of various kinds from various perspectives. Now, this has resulted in various stands of different people on the idea of professionalization. Now, when I say that, what does it professionalization mean particularly? It would be like something like an example which we can clearly refer to, something like which we all would understand is a CA. So a chartered accountant across the world gets a degree and is evaluated and gives a certain set of examinations, gets a license to practice, and that license across the world is also recognizable. And across the world is recognizable, and there is a set of certain standards the person and the certain sort of work ethics the person or the professional maintains. So even if that is a broad understanding, it means that the more professional this sector, the evaluation sector becomes, the more capacity building and people involvement in development of capacities becomes very critical. So these are very intertwined subjects of professionalization and capacity building. Over the last few years, one of the interesting initiatives which has been done is the interregional initiative for professionalization of evaluation. That's an interesting initiative which has started, which is across continents, across VOPEs, and across different sets of people coming together and trying to think through how to go about doing this process. There's a lovely web page for that interregional initiative. Please do visit it and just talk about how these things are different across countries and the challenges which are there when we talk about professionalization of evaluation. Next slide, please, Mahima. One of the most vexed thing that comes ahead or is troubling everybody is the definition of the professional. What do you mean by it, and what does it happen? So we in the interregional initiative, there was a whole established process of trying to understand this definition, and this came through a basis of a work which we did across a period of time where a lot of people were involved, a lot of countries were involved, and we came to a working definition because we realized, look at the literature review. If we did the literature review across that, we found various different definitions. So we came to a working definition basically, and the working definition is there in red, so you can read it. I will not go across to the going through the definition word by word. But a layman's explanation was the profession of evaluation would mean the practice would be guided by some principle, ethics, and standards recognized by law, and there is certification process. Also gives access to capacity development, knowledge management, and training, and the pathways of development of the future capacities are steered by recognized institutional structures. So we thought that this is a layman's really explanation which sort of brings together all the different strands, and in that, knowledge management capacity becomes and training becomes a very key segment of work as we're talking about increasing capacities in evaluations across. Next slide, Mahima. So largely there are two strands when we are talking about the professionalization standards and professionalization work. One standard is concerned about this whole field of evaluation getting recognition by the law. Other standard is the capacity of the members, enhance the capacity of the members, and also sort of enrich the field with the quality of service being provided. Because a lot of people, new people do join this field of evaluations and do come into this field of evaluation. As Mahima also explained, we were not taught in the, I think very few people would have been gone through in a master's degree or a bachelor's degree where they have been taught evaluations. But when you suddenly join this field of development or work, get into the government like Rashmi ji, suddenly they are sort of vexed, they're challenged with this issue of evaluation, and people pick it up, develop a knack for it, and start working in this field. So some people said, oh, I don't understand this, I'm not taught in this, so I move away from that field. So there's a pool of people who actually come through a very trained, rigorous process of understanding of evaluation in their master's or bachelor's or that degree is very hardly few. And in India, if you look at it, it's hardly there. It's hardly there. So anyway, a couple of places where you do have a couple of certificate courses, but you do not really have a proper degree course or a master's course. So there is this whole gap which we see. And developing the capacity of the newest set of people, or getting the what you call this the academic institutions involved in the process, and the issue of the law recognition by law, we all have to work towards in both of them. So there is a whole space of working together for this whole space. And it is not that this is important or that is important. At this stage in India, at least both are important to work towards that. Next slide, Mahima. So overall, this professional mechanism would generally mean that what will happen is, if we are becoming more professional and we have greater capacity around in the arena, or a set of people are there with good capacities, would definitely mean higher quality of evaluations, and the uptake and the use of evaluations will also go up. And also there will be, if you are somebody who is a trained and certified professional around evaluation, then the lot of trust is also then, because a lot of people will start trusting this professional who has come in and has some background training and has certified process and understanding of the situation. Then there's a trust which also builds up. And these two are also critical when we can talk about, say, the demonstrated influence, or the larger influence in decision-making process is also influenced by evidence, because that's the end use of all the evaluations we do. And that the evaluations, why we want the evaluations to be influential. We want the evaluations to be used by policymakers to say, all right, how do I do allocation of the resources? And all these are intertwined, because in the system, in the process where we have the professional who does the evaluation has got greater capacity. Moving ahead, and hopefully if we get the professionalization done, we can go through a lot of process. And one of the process is that we will be talking about education and training is organized at in the national level in a manner where you have options of going through education and doing work and getting an education, on these many courses and people. And there's a certification process also available, which you can freely take and go ahead and do with it. So can we go to the next slide, Mahima? So basically the future direction as we look into this whole work of professionalization, at least in India, definitely is looking at the working closely with Niti Aayog or other bodies and the VOPEs together, and also the NGO or the INGO sector, the development sector overall, working with the government closely in developing a regulatory framework so we can sort of agree to certain levels of ethics, conduct, and standards. Also develop, enhance the evaluation competencies, the knowledge and skills across the board. Also look at the whole process of institutional structuring, where we talk about accreditation, licensing of the institutions and stuff like that. So which will mean that we are also engaging with the Parliament and sort of building a relationship where we can talk about a bill, or in a process where we are talking about legalization of this whole process of the work or the field of evaluation. And it also means there's a lot of relationship building which will need to happen with our lawmakers, with planning bodies and think tanks to push the agenda over here. And of all this, when we do, hopefully the key crux of the matter will also come is, do we also have a national evaluation policy? Because all these things together, goes together. All these are aligned, hand in hand, goes together. So hopefully we'll also have a national evaluation policy. I'll stop at that, Mahima, and I'm open to taking a couple of questions.
Thank you, Aniruddha. We'll come back with questions after everyone's presentation, but thank you for giving such a great macro view of where we are, what professionalization actually means, and what we need to move in that direction. On that note, I'd now like to welcome Rashmi ji to the stage with her presentation on embracing dynamism in this ecosystem. Over to you, Rashmi ji.
Thank you, Mahima. Good morning, good evening from the place you are joining, and namaste from India. Thank you for introducing me. And the title of my presentation, as you have seen, is Embracing Dynamism in EvalCap Plexus. I will focus my presentation on basically why a flexible capacity building system is needed in the country like India to professionalize evaluation and what has been done so far in this context. Next slide, please. So various ingredients constitute in strengthening the larger evaluation ecosystem. I have mentioned here the 6 ingredients such as props like facilitate developing eval ecosystem. These are establishment of monitoring and evaluation system in the country, recognition of the importance of evidence-based policies and interventions, quality evidence, and so on. Actually, the evaluation has to be a separate discipline to professionalize this field and enhance evaluation use and so on. These are several ingredients we can think of as props in the professionalization. Next slide, please. So, but I think that one of the most important props is capacities in the field of evaluation at various levels. In other words, to develop evaluation ecosystem in a country like India or in a region or at a global level, both demand for it and supply of quality evaluators are prerequisites. I think the demand and supply will emerge from large scale awareness, capabilities, and advocacy about the importance and process of evaluations in the development agenda. So I consider capacity development as most important as it leads to quality evaluations, which enhances evaluation use. Consequently, demand for evaluation increases, and from the supply side, we get capable evaluators and other stakeholders. So existence of a comprehensive evaluation ecosystem does not mean mere existence of institutions that conduct evaluations from time to time. It means mechanisms that promote appreciation of the importance of evidence-based decision making and follow high international national ethical standards, and mechanisms that ensure the results, as I said, these are utilized. So the integration of these plexus in the ecosystem must ensure development of institutional and individual capacities for evaluators as well as other stakeholders. So you can see here in this slide that capacity development needs dynamism, which includes flexibility, adaptability in changing situations, follow a multi-channel approach to fill the gaps in capabilities. There should be requirement-based educational and training modules that could be used as per needs of the stakeholders. India is a very big country, as you know, and therefore its needs are also very versatile. The capacity building thus needs to be evolving. Next slide, please, Mahima. Now I will focus what we have done so far in India in developing eval ecosystem in the country. The time is very short, so I will just give you a few glimpses of it. Various measures are being taken, especially towards capacity building. As a chair of partnership team of APIA regional strategy, we organized a needs assessment survey for starting M&D courses in various institutions in Asia Pacific region. In India, this survey was conducted by Evaluation Committee of India, which is a professional association of evaluators. The survey brought out that various academic and research institutions are keen to start M&D courses, both long-term and short-term. Some of the organizations are already organizing some of the modules on M&D like IRMA and IRD and some of the management institutes in their existing management courses and other courses related to social sector. But there is a need to have a specific courses in M&D as a separate discipline if we want to have professionalization in evaluation and we want to establish evaluation as a separate discipline. As a pilot and online training program in basic monitoring and evaluation, which was conducted for Delhi University students and faculty. A total of 90 students participated in that. I'm happy to say that this was the first course of its kind in India, specifically on monitoring and evaluation. And this course was spread over the 3 weeks. On the basis of the success of this initiative and demand for the courses as revealed by NEET survey, now we are planning a full-fledged course and hope to start shortly in various institutions. Another course that ISST in partnership with other organizations, including Acquire, conducts is a 10-week online training course titled Facilitating Gender Transformative Evaluation. This course is very popular. The more details can be given by Rajib, who is the other panelist in this session. Various governmental, Acquire, and other organizations organize webinars, conferences, discussions that provide a platform for sensitization at large and develop capacities in various aspects of evaluation. Recently organized EvalFest 2022 in collaboration with APIA is an example of this kind of activities. Next slide, please. The capacity development work is very vast, seeing the country needs and all of us need to join hands towards this end. EQI has taken initiative to develop partnerships and signed MOUs with government, NGOs, academic institutions, and other VOPEs working at regional and international level, and continue discussions online as well as offline and bring out knowledge products from time to time. Youth bring bubbling energy and new ideas. So an Evaluate India chapter has been started, which would provide opportunities to young who would like to join this sector. Evaluate India also has a session in the global week tomorrow at 3 p.m. So all are requested to join that session. Next slide, please. So what next? We have completed a little journey and we have to go a long way ahead. So if we want to professionalize evaluation, we need to develop short-term, long-term, full-fledged courses with course material. This material also needs to be translated in various languages, even in India. I'm not talking at global level because we need course material in different languages at global level. But in India also, we require the course material and course structure in several languages. It is also necessary to tie up with academic institutions to start courses. Next slide, please. So I stop here with the statement that capacity development is for learning, not only for getting certificates, and therefore embracing dynamism in eval cap plexus is extremely important. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Rashmi ji, for your presentation and for keeping within the time limit. This is a very good overview of where we are with respect to capacity building in particular in India currently, and the importance of building synergies between the various initiatives as well as networks with government and non-government players. I would now like to call Rajib Nandi, and over to you, Rajib, for your presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Mahima, and thanks to that EQI and the organizing committee to invite me to speak in this panel. So, I actually would like to present our key learnings from, from our efforts to integrate critical gender lens in building evaluation ecosystem in India, where a major component of this ecosystem building is capacity development. Now, before I go through my presentation, I would like to thank Aniruddha and Rashmi ji for providing the perfect conceptual background on evaluation ecosystem and how capacity, both at vertical and horizontal levels, becomes an important aspect of ecosystem building here. So I'm not here to explain why gender and equity lens also must be an integral part of this evaluation ecosystem. I think enough literature is there, including SDG related literature available there already. And I might, if someone wants, I can share some of those links later. But primarily, my presentation will be highlighting the important takeaways that can make evaluations transformative as far as the gender-based inequalities and power dynamics are concerned, and critically analyzes the lessons learned from those activities. So, Mahima, the next slide, please. Yeah. So now but let me take a quick, position actually, on gender and equity, and where these gender and equity advocates they come from. As the central focus of gender transformative evaluation is equities and power structure, its first priority to recognize different ways of thinking and knowing about data, informational, critical analysis. So element of responsive evaluation is already integrated in gender transformative evaluation. In other words, gender transformative evaluation tries to add values to those who are the most marginalized in order to enhance the accountability in terms of rights, access, justice of the programs of the policies. Hence, this is to say that gender transformative evaluation is just not a value-free assessment, rather a part of the change-making process. And actually, entire evaluation system, entire evaluation process is basically a change-making process, not just an assessment. So my main points here, that entire question of capacity is situated within a larger understanding that evaluation as a development discourse and practice is primarily meant for influencing decision-making and gender transformative policy making, and finally social change towards removing horizontal and vertical inequalities. Next slide, please, Mahima. Yeah. So, so let me go back now to our kind of initiatives, how we built that, or how we tried to build that evaluation field in India. So in early 2000s, when the evaluation started taking a shape in South Asia, both, from a global South perspective, with the emerging voluntary organizations of professional evaluators, a group of gender advocates and the practitioners who used to practice with gender lens, could see a possibility to build this emerging evaluation field with an early intervention towards engendering the evaluation discourse towards influencing policymakers and decision makers. But there are a lot of challenges were there. Perspectives were yet to be built and to get consolidated. The basic thing like gender disaggregated data, it was not available in majorly. And definitely there was disconnects between data, program planning, decision making. So my previous organization, Institute of Social Studies Trust, they took a leadership role in building this space and this network. And we undertook a 4-5-year program, actually. It's called Engineering Policy Through Evaluation. Now, the aims of that program was to enhance capacity and understanding of gender transformative evaluation for a range of stakeholders, with a conviction that it would influence gender transformative policy making. So, you please go to the next slide. Yeah, so I think you can see here, a lot of activities we conducted in those 5 years. Different kind of participants from different kind of stakeholders, a lot of activities from learning workshops to moderation of online community, participation in evaluation conferences, and to present different kind of reflections and learnings, and different kind of outputs from resource material to edited collection on meta evaluations, then short training videos, etc. But I think let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so I think I'll let discuss some of these learning actually, and those activities from those 4-year program. So, what are the key learning from those 4-5 years of activities? One, we did a series of face-to-face learning workshops, but the main key takeaways were that there was lack of flow between these workshops and different participants, basically, because different participants were coming from different workshops, so that flow was missing there. And then the resource material, absolutely. And in 2011, when we started that program, there's not enough literature resource actually. But we produce a lot of resources in next 4-5 years, but primarily in English. And also there's no mechanism to understand that the use of those resources and where those resources are used and how those resources are used and and if any feedback was there on those resources. Again, reflective writings and research, absolutely in English. I think Rashmi ji already mentioned in her presentation that we need to expand actually different regions in different vernaculars. Online community, yeah, absolutely. I think it is one of the successful activities under that program, which grew very fast. I think today there are 5,000 members in that community, which eventually became the global hub for the Eval Gender Plus platform. But it requires strong facilitation. I think we have a very good facilitator, Ritu Nanda, my colleague, who actually spent a lot of time to encourage people to participate in that sharing platform. Otherwise, it doesn't happen automatically. People don't share. People don't come and access those resources or access the platform. Workshops with the government evaluation departments, yes, absolutely. It was the end of that program in 2015 when the Niti Aayog was formed. We had a series of workshops with the evaluators, government evaluators from the state evaluation departments, and twice actually, once in April and then towards the end also in October. But it requires a systematic process of strengthening capacity. It's not like a few training workshop. And another problem with those workshops were primarily on methods and tools and techniques. So the perspective building, that very important part, was primarily absent in those learning sessions. From learning from that, those activities, we started an e-learning course in 2018. I think we already conducted four iterations. The last iteration was for the South Asian participants. But it shouldn't be ad hoc kind of activity. It needs a lot of time to be spent to understand the pedagogy and what should be the ideal pedagogy for this kind of learning. It was primarily the digital platform, and you require a good, friendly digital platform. We had experience of using both Moodle and later Google Classroom. So it should be friendly and it should be easily accessible for the students. And again, language issue. So it's conducted in English. So it's only for a certain section of the practitioners. Otherwise, if we talk about the overall learning, overall very, very positive kind of learning, positive contribution to build this field of the feminist and gender transformative evaluation, and a lot of new learning. People started learning about how to design interventions, and with this gender transformative lens, and how to design monitoring and evaluations from the gender transformative lens. But there are a lot of challenges, and I want to highlight some of those important challenges here. First is that organizational capacity of building internal process of explaining and convincing the leadership. So, it's about the organizational learning. It's not about a section of evaluators or section of researchers to learn about gender transformative evaluation. The leadership also must understand its value, actually. And and how you can make the evaluation reports and findings, for larger audience. Also, an important challenge of what I felt that, after some point of time, gender becomes just a politically correct category. It becomes like a checkbox. We need to do gender karna hai, but why you want to do gender? That understanding and where actually we can attain the success or equality, that part I think somehow missing in the learning. Absolutely limited space and disconnect between the government and non-governmental practitioners. That's already, it's there. It was earlier there. It's even now that is there, though there are definitely a lot of initiatives taken by Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office of Niti Aayog recently. Lack of academic courses, I think Rashmi ji already mentioned about it, but there are efforts are going on. And also, like, major players work in silos. So this conversation between different players is missing. Yeah. So I think I'm not, adding any extra point here. Like, the points are mentioned by Aniruddha and Rashmi ji. I more or less agree with those issues. So definitely we need robust organizational systems and strategies. We need to learn from the experiences from other parts of the world, and to develop and run customized courses for different sets of stakeholders in not only in English but also in regional languages. And I want to mention here one thing very clearly, like, we also need to understand, like, evaluation education and evaluation training as two different boxes, though interconnected. The way you talk about evaluation, the way you talk about capacity development in evaluation in the academic institutes, in the institutional, in academic institutions, is slightly different from, when you design course for the practitioners. So the way of teaching, the way of learning, the method, the pedagogy, I think there should be some differences. And also you need customized kind of courses for different sets of people, for the graduate or postgraduate students, and for the emerging practitioners or professionals. We need, like, these different kind of courses to be designed. Yeah. Next, I think this is the final slide. Yeah, from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajib, for this really comprehensive presentation and sharing your learnings. And what your presentation also did was to place some of the recent initiatives that I have also been a part of as a participant in the context of the larger trajectory of where capacity building is going and where gender transformative evaluations are going. I would now like to call Yatin Diwakar. Over to you, Yatin, with your presentation.
Thank you, Mahima, and all the senior evaluators already nicely set the stage about all the topics. So what I'll be focusing on is how we are trying to get youth involved into evaluation and sensitizing youth towards M&E. So these are the initiatives which have been taken by Eval Youth India primarily. I'm sure most of you already are aware of the Eval Youth movement which started in 2015 during the Eval year. It defines youth as, or rather young and emerging evaluators, as anyone who is up to 30 years of age or has less than 5 years of experience in conducting evaluations. And as part of the community which is being evaluated, they consider anyone up to years of 35 years of age as a who is stakeholder of an evaluation or is being affected by an evaluation as a youth. And so Eval Youth focuses on participation of youth as stakeholders in evaluation and as conductors of evaluators both. So Eval Youth Asia was established in 2019 and Eval Youth India was established in 2020 with the help of ECOI. And in the next slides, I'll talk about some of the activities that we are doing. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So one important thing is that when we talk about youth and their participation and their capacities, etc., there are some primary challenges which they are facing throughout. One of the major challenges is around capacity development, access to training programs and degree courses and internships, etc., or language barrier, as has been discussed by previous speakers. But there are also challenges related to job roles and formulation and opportunities, which is the focus of the professionalization angle. And then again, there are problems with funding, access, and networking and support, etc. But the most important access is, can you click next ones? Yeah. So the most important access is awareness. Most youth who are entering into the development sector are not even aware about what is evaluation, and they can become evaluators, trained evaluators, and how the skill sets of evaluators are different from a typical researcher, etc. And so we need to build this awareness, attract youth towards what is evaluation, and that is what we are trying to do in Eval Youth India in our first few years. So target is primarily students and young professionals in the development sector. And the need we identified is that they need basic information about M&E, career options within M&E, and raise their interest to work in this sector. So we conduct webinars with ECOI, SLEVA, which is Sri Lankan Evaluation Association, and other Eval Youth chapters in the region. And we also co-organize the winter school at the Asia Pacific level with other Eval Youth chapters and VOPEs in the region. And we regularly conduct local events and now we are also conducting the eval case competition in 2021 and 2022. I will speak more about the India evaluation case competition because this is our main event currently to attract students towards the field of evaluation. It is on lines of the World Evaluation Case Competition, where we give project case study to the student teams which are participating, where they have to prepare an evaluation plan or a proposal with theory of change and indicators and evaluation questions, etc. Last year, which was our first year, we had 90+ teams registering for the event, of which 54 actually participated in the event and 40 submitted their proposals by the end of the day. Of this, we selected 3 winning teams, which was selected by 7 jury members. We had 3 rounds of judging. First was a primary short listing of the submissions, and then jury gave some scores. And for the top 10 teams, we did a second round of scoring to find out the final top 3 teams. The first team was of Mahatma Gandhi National Fellows from IIM Bangalore. So these are the students who are working in different parts of the country, in different districts of the country, with on skill development initiatives of Government of India, and they had formed a team of themselves and they participated pretty sincerely. And so that gave us an understanding that people who are actually practicing some development initiatives are more attuned towards what is the need of evaluation and how it should be performed, etc. During this event, building up to this event, because we realized that this event is not just for having the competition, but also to raise awareness of the students and make them understand what is evaluation. We conducted 2 webinars around these themes. One was on data collection and another one was on basics of M&D. And then we organized 2 sessions for the teams to explain them the details of the concepts, go in depth, explain theory of change to them, work with them, etc. So on. So we gave them a hands-on experience of how all the evaluation activities are working. So learning from the experiences of last year's case competition, we are again conducting one this year. This year it is already being supported by BMGF, DMU, IRMA, and just now we are received news that JPAL is also supporting our event. So please visit our website to learn more about the event. And if you know any students or if you are a student yourself, please form teams and participate in the event. The last date for registration is on 10th of July, so that students who will be starting their master's degree programs this year or those who have just finished it last year can also register, or rather finishing it this year can also register. Competition will be on 31st of July. We will be having some attractive cash prizes for the winning teams and some training opportunities through IRMA and JPAL, etc. for them. And the top team will also be representing India at the World Evaluation Case Competition again this year. So can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so keeping the overall presentation short, I'll focus on the outcomes that we had from this case competition. So many of the participants did become members of Evaluate India and are now regularly connected in our different events. Some of them with whom we connected through ICC and Winter School and other initiatives that have now become our active volunteers and are also taking up roles within Evaluate India's organizing structure. And the jury members and other experts that we are connected are in touch with us and are like the ones we connected last year also participating with us this year. And we're also planning some other events with them, maybe some sort of mentorship programs or internships, etc. And hopefully in the coming year, now that COVID is behind us, with EQI support, we will be working on our face-to-face training programs. So yeah, so one important thing is that there's also some issues that we realized, some learnings we had there. When we actually declared some cash prizes, that was the date when we started receiving higher number of registrations, which was towards the end of registrations last year. And then when we on the very last day of the registrations, we suddenly had 60 teams registering, but out of them, most of them did not participate. So these were not the serious teams which were participating. Colleges where we were able to contact with the professors, there it was more likely that teams would prepare and participate in the event. So we are also trying to connect with professors and deans, etc., directors this year and get them interested in this so that we can reach out to more colleges, more students, and we'll have better meaningful participation. And though in the last slide I said that some of them joined us and have become active volunteers, if you look at the total number of participants last year, which was more than 400 registered students, we hardly had some 20 or 30 joining Evaluate India and fewer than that becoming active members. So yeah, so the numbers are very much on the low side. Students are still treating this as just as another competition and are there for the cash prizes. But hopefully of this, even if 4, 5, 10 people get converted every year, and if you're able to engage them beyond the event, get them involved in other activities, then hopefully they will consider evaluation as a career option and become volunteers in this sector. So as have been already discussed by others, our next steps are around creating regional language training material on M&D and having more college level events, local sessions, offline sessions to create awareness about evaluation among students, and continue hosting events which you're already doing. If you are a YE, if you identify being an YE, please join us. I will post this link in our chat as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Yatin, for that presentation and for sharing about the various initiatives being taken to actually engage the youth in evaluations and within the evaluation ecosystem. We have some questions in the chat box, but I think before sort of I go to the questions by the audience, I also have a question for all question or two for all the speakers here. In the meanwhile, if there are any more questions from the audience, from the participants, please send that to us in the chat box and we can pick some of the questions up. Now, going back to the presentation that Aniruddha, you made about professionalization of the field and need for a national evaluation framework, a competency framework, regulatory framework, and so on. What I want to know is that are there any existing steps being taken to build such frameworks, especially regulatory and competency framework, so that we can move towards professionalization? And if not, then what are some of the international best practices that we can learn from, or what is the starting point for us?
So internationally, we do have, in fact, let's categorize into two parts. Internationally, we did do a number of initiatives, and someone sitting over here in this panel, Rashmi ji, has done a fantastic piece of work, which she had looked at 6 or 7 countries and looked at what the situation is in these countries, what can be the challenges there, and how they've done a fantastic study and that things Rashmi ji has done. On the national evaluation policies, the challenges of, challenges to the pathway of professionalization and all that thing, there's a fantastic work as Rashmi ji has done. And that piece of work has also been supported by, I think, more than 7 to 8 VOPs, means that there are 8-10 countries, so which has supported that whole piece of work. That's one of the things. Second thing is that there is also IOC is also done a bit of work on the professionalization. IOC is the international organization, which sort of the VOPEs, international organization for the VOPEs. So they have also done a bit of work which has on professionalization, and they have done some work. And there is sporadic work in UN, UNEG, and other places. So also the American Evaluation Association, Canadian Evaluation, they have done sporadic work, but there is no coherent movement around that whole thing, to put that whole message across. That's one part. But because of different challenges in getting it, thinking, because you're talking about law, and law in different countries are different places and different situations. Contexts are different in all these places. One part is the second part in our country in from 2015 onwards, we have been, and Rajib ji and Rashmi ji has been quite strong flag bearers in that, to getting connected with Niti Aayog, with government, to understand and unfold and create a pathway where we are EQI at organizational professional body like EQI gets connected with the Niti Aayog and the think tanks, so that we have. So I create a space for this evaluation, be it terms of courses or, joining hands with academic institutions, or be joining hands with the Niti Aayog. So that space is over the last 3-4 years, or more than 3-4 years, 10 years, we have been trying to push the agenda over there, opening up spaces. I think at this stage, as a VOP in EQI, we do have an MOU with Niti Aayog, which sort of gives us as a partner to do a lot of piece of work. And that makes you in the agenda, because it's a process, I think, where a lot of time where we go from a stage where we have partners to becoming framing and drafting the evaluation policy. There is drafts available. A lot of people in EQI has contributed to the draft, taking that draft to various discussion forums and taking it across to the lastly finalization to the national, parliament and all. And you know how our parliament works. So there is that whole pathway to cross, and hopefully in this couple of years we should be there doing that work. So there are these initiatives. The important is that as we talk about these events, about these things, is important is to get connected. The more people get connected, the more evaluators get connected, more young evaluators get connected. That raises the voice, that creates the more spaces to talk about. And when we raise the banner of evaluation, we are also talking about accountability and looking at better evidence use. So definitely there is that whole connect. So the more numbers join, the space and the agenda becomes stronger going ahead.
Thank you, Aniruddha. It's also very interesting to hear about these synergies that are now that are beginning to form between government and non-government spaces and practitioners within the evaluation ecosystem. Another point that sort of came up in each of your presentations was actually about varying needs within the evaluation ecosystem of different practitioners, of different stakeholders. And I'm myself working in some capacity with DMO right now, and I can see that the needs of stakeholders in the government is very different from capacity building needs in the non-government space. And I want to bring this question to you, Rashmi ji, and if you could talk about a little bit more about, given these varying needs, what role can VOP play in evaluation capacity building of different kinds of stakeholders? You're on mute.
Thank you, Mahima. And I think this is a very important question because the role of VOPE is increasing day by day. And I think they can be like a bridge among the various stakeholders because they have their contacts with government, they have their contacts and members from communities, from NGOs, from academic institutions. So I think that as a state for a vast outreach and sensitization, VOPE's role is extremely important. They can work in the knowledge exchange and professionalization and creating networks for targeted learning, which is very crucial. I can give you some example what ECOI has done, which has already been mentioned by Aniruddha and some other panelists. For example, we have our networking among VOPEs at national, regional, and international level. We also have our MOU signed with Niti Aayog and other government. We are continuing our dialogue with other government organizations. We also have signed with MOUs with academic institutions and other organizations for starting various courses. Now, ECOI is thinking to collaborate with institutions to develop course material and need-based educational modules, as well as other knowledge products as mentioned earlier, and sharing these at various platforms. Now, the present work is to develop course material and course structure of various modules for different types of stakeholders as per their demand and translate them into various regional languages. And I invite here all the participants and organizations who want to join in this work. They should join us in this endeavor, and I think there will be great success if you join us in this work. We will be able to establish evaluation as a separate discipline and an evaluation ecosystem. Thank you very much. I stop here.
Thank you.
Mahima, may I just add a couple of lines here actually, because the question is very important. And Mahima, when we talk the word government, it sounds very like one unit. Government is actually, we have different systems like central government, state government, Niti Aayog, DMO, state evaluation departments, like different ministries, different departments. So so even within the government systems, there are different initiatives are there, and again, even the government system, they are working in silos. So I really see like the convergence is missing here. I know that it's not that easy. It's very easy to say that, but because so many agencies within the government, I think the effort is there. But let's see. I mean, and here I think VOPEs play a major role to bring a lot of players together. So let's see. I think we have to wait for a few more years to see that if anything is progressing or not. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for adding that, Rajib. And I completely agree that even within the government, the state center different needs within state planning department and human resource department and agriculture department different needs and different ways in which evaluations need to be conducted, and capacity build and correspondingly capacity building is needed. Actually, now I'll come to you, Rajib, and this is a question in the chat as well that Niveta Roy asked that what are the various challenges faced in terms of wider acceptance of evaluation reports and findings for the feminist lens. And you also did briefly speak about convincing the leadership about the value of capacity build, about gender transformative evaluation and its capacity building. So if you could share a few lessons about how does one go about doing that, because gender is often reduced to a checkbox or a silo, a separate silo, and is not integrated into mainstream evaluative thinking. So some lessons, some insights on how your experience has been.
Yeah. Thank you, Mahima. No, it's very, I think, yeah, I saw that question actually in the chat box. Yeah. No, I mean, you see, I don't have any clear-cut answer that this is the solution for this thing. It is there. It is still marginalized. It's not only about gender. It just talk about evidence. It's still do you think there's a wide acceptance of evidence data for policymakers? No. So it is definitely a challenge and an ongoing kind of a battle. But let me share an experience of mine. Actually, it's slightly old. I think around 9 years old experience, and I wrote a paper also based on that experience. Very quickly, let me share the story. Around 9 years back, the largest cooperative farmers cooperative in India, and one of the largest farmers cooperative in India, and one of the largest mobile service provider in India came together and started doing a program called text message through mobile phone for information, prompt information about on rural India to the farmers and the people living in the rural areas. And they came to us, to my previous organization, to do an evaluation of that program after 2 years of the program. I mean, why they came to us, that's a question even to me, even now. Perhaps maybe because when sometimes we say that no, this is a very politically correct category, so it's not always bad. It also has some other other consequences. So maybe they got that reference from maybe Ministry of Women and Child Development from somewhere. That's why they came to us. But the program was done. The first 2 years is completely in non-gender manner. The gender was just missing there in that all activities, even in the program. But the main idea of that program to empower people, to extend that IT-enabled services and to prompt information and better decision. Now, who are the stakeholders? Both men and women, no? So when they came to us, we started convincing them from this point. Because when you talk about empowerment, it's not about empowerment of a certain section of the society. You are talking about empowerment of the entire society, and men and women both live there. So don't think that decision making only done by men, because a lot of decisions to be taken by women also, and you need to empower them also to take that decision. So we just tweaked that evaluation framework a little bit and put it slightly tweaked and put those questions where you can bring that value of that that approach in the findings, and you show that where actually they are going wrong on including people, or all segments of the society in their program. And it clicked, it worked there. They understood, and actually they invited the evaluators for a detailed kind of presentation, the learning and where they can actually intervene in the next phase, and where they can bring the other stakeholders, primarily the women and other people in the program. So it is like a negotiation kind of thing, but I must say that space is not always there. You have to try, but it's not that you are always successful to create that space of negotiation. Yeah.
That was a very useful example to really think about how we can think of GTE not as a standalone method, but as a lens which we bring to every evaluation and our evaluative thinking, and that sort of becomes a starting point of convincing stakeholders to adopt that. I also have a question for Yatin, and I think you talked about this gap between what we learn in the classroom, and it has been sort of this underlying theme of our panel today, what students learn in the classroom and when they come to the field of evaluation, and there's this lack of awareness about evaluation as a field. What we also sometimes see is that job descriptions and competencies have failed to catch up with some of the recent developments in both academic trainings and some of these recent initiatives like Evaluate, like Winter School, etc. So how can we work to create more opportunities for youth in the sector who are perhaps coming from not from a place of being trained in evaluation, but are looking for opportunities in the field? So how can we work towards that?
Yeah, so we'll have to engage both sides on this. One is training the youth, and the other side is where their demand is for evaluators, like the agencies which are recruiting them. These might be NGOs, government agencies, or consulting firms who want youth and evaluators or data analysts and different roles, monitoring experts, etc., to work with them. And as Aniruddha ji had said earlier about professionalization, and once we define what is a professional evaluator, what their competencies are, and what are the minimum requirements for different kind of these activities, like MEL manager will be different, field level evaluator will be different. And once we start documenting these things, the required competencies for each of them, and the standard JDs, like VOPE have a central role in this. We are connected with lot of organizations, lot of donor agencies, with government, and we currently, though, like we don't have a huge network, like about 300 350 odd members, and out of that I would say hardly 100 are active at a given point. But if we can reach out to more institutions, more organizations, and bring them all together to create a discussion around this, and then we can start building up these JDs from bottom up. Like you can pick up some standard good JDs, some agencies have some strong JDs written already. We can start working from them and create some common understanding in the market. Like it was being said earlier that when a CA goes out in the field, if he or she is a CA, it is known that what competencies they have, or if they have been appointed to do a certain task, then there is a standardization in that task, what kind of work they have to do. If we can do some similar kind of activities, what is currently happening is that many of us do accept that many of us are accidental evaluators. We were either in the development sector earlier, or we were into the research sector earlier, and then we ended up doing some evaluation studies and got interested into it, and then we have developed ourselves as evaluators. But now, moving ahead from here, we should think about how we can train people to become actually evaluators, give them a deeper understanding of both the development sector as well as what is evaluation, how to do evaluations, and everything. And once we start doing that, I feel that we can build better JDs. So yes, at the national level, once we have some professionalization standards set up, some ethics and some competencies established, then we can work from that to create standardized JDs. Then we can approach institutions that see these are the lower end JDs which don't require much of decision making, but are more into data crunching or data collection kind of activities. And there you can at least hire youth without any experience in the sector. Otherwise, what happens is everyone is asking for experience of 2 to 3 years to start with. And unless by mistake you got an opportunity in your earlier job to do some sort of an evaluation, you will never get into evaluation sector. So we'll have to create that ladder of posts, like bottom level ladder, entry level jobs, then mid level jobs, then higher level jobs within evaluation sector, and define those roles broadly. And I feel that Evaluation Community of India and Evaluate India can take a lead into that.
Thank you.
Ma'am,
Rashmi,
I would like to add what Yatin has said. Yeah, on competencies, actually there are various documents available at global level on competencies, but they are very large. And if we want to implement some of these, it is extremely impossible to implement those competency framework. So in what I have in mind just now, that is it possible that our situations are different in India, and we not only need competencies for evaluators, but also for commissioners of evaluators and managers of evaluators, and they will be totally different from what evaluators competencies are needed. So what we should do, that we should do a kind of survey that at what level, what kind of main core competencies are required, because some people are have excellent competencies working on the job, some people have got training and they have developed some competencies. So, I mean, we need more discussion on it, whether we should do some kind of surveys who are in this field, who are in the evaluation field at various levels like commissioners, managers, evaluators, and other stakeholders. What type of competencies are needed? Because even at community level, people need some kind of competencies to appreciate evaluations and how it helps them also, not only the government policy or not only the government or the parliament, but also it affects the people. So this is just my thinking.
Thank you for sharing that. And actually that ties back very neatly with where we started, where Aniruddha emphasized the importance of professionalization, what it means, why we need a competency framework. And because even now, a lot of times I see government vacancies for M&E professionals with the essential qualification being a master's in economics, which to me doesn't make sense if you limit your hiring to a certain degree, whereas you need competencies in M&E for an M&E role. So we've already talked a lot about the synergy we require between government and non-government and different stakeholders. Before I sort of get to the last sort of my question and key takeaways from the session, I'll quickly we have a question in the chat box by Vikas. Actually, it's more of a comment that there is a need for building evaluation capacity that is culturally sensitive and context specific, because existing capacity building frameworks are very West-centric. And we had an earlier comment also about the Indianness, about the practical use of evaluation. And I think this is something also we talked about, that when we are talking about professionalization and capacity building, we really need to talk about the context of South Asia and in India in particular, where we are operating, and what is required here. So if any of you would like to say a little bit more about this, these sort of comments in the chat box as well.
May I just add a couple of comments? Yeah, one comment maybe. I agree with Vikas actually. That problem we always face whenever we talk about competence, whenever we talk about capacity in evaluation. Like all frameworks, all approaches are primarily from the global north. I mean, even there's a very strong evaluation approaches. They are called indigenous evaluation, which is very, very strong in Australia, New Zealand, and maybe some parts of Africa and Latin America. But still, South Asia is lagging behind, and that kind of initiative is missing right now. But it's so relevant, because if you can't contextualize your evaluation, then I think it becomes very kind of a very technical kind of exercise. Like the things we talk about, empowerment, things talk about removing inequalities, it don't happen. This change you are talking about within the system. So even we want to understand systems and change in the systems, if you don't bring that approaches and don't bring from our own learning in developing this field, then it is not going to kind of change we are expecting won't happen. So absolutely that problem is there, but yeah. So sorry, yeah, that's one point. Another thing I was thinking, but I lost that here. But I think someone can add to it.
I will add to Rajibji's point here. Many of these approaches which have been designed by West-centric, global North-centric people, they were designed by practitioners, but they were strongly supported by academic rigor around it. They developed it into papers and books, and then started teaching it, applying it, and learning from it, and develop those methods and develop those evaluation theories and techniques, etc. And that is something that I feel is missing in our region. We don't have, because we don't have institutes where evaluation is being taught as a formal discipline, and where people are doing research around evaluation as evaluation. We have people doing studies which are evaluation of some projects or some programs, but very less work which is happening around bettering our understanding around evaluation. So unless those kind of discussions will start, that kind of research will start, and we'll have our own regional evaluation journal, which I hope that in the next coming year we will have one in place. Unless these things will start, I don't think we will move much ahead in this direction, in creating our own literature, our own dialogue, our own things.
I completely agree with you, Yatin, there that we really need to think about spend more time on building our evaluation capacities, not just in silos, but like as an academic exercise also. Just one last question that I have for the panel today, and then we move to key takeaways from this session, is we all talked about building M&E courses and curriculums and building capacities. There is a lot of work that is happening, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. We've seen workshops, certificate courses, M&E courses coming up. And we heard about some of the examples from Rashmi ji and Rajib ji today in this panel. But at the same time, and this is something, Aniruddha, you mentioned in your presentation very briefly about the need for building a commonly agreed training program to bring some sort of standardization while keeping in mind the varying needs. How can we work towards building a commonly agreed training program where we bring together the various initiatives and sort of start building them in more systematically, perhaps?
Just a quick answer to that is that one thing is that important is that there can be various types of courses, right? So also there is a connect, at least in India, we have to connect with the UGC to understand how we frame these courses, how the framework of the courses can be. There can be certificate courses, small time, executive development courses, to a proper 4-year degree course, to a master's, advanced master's. There are different types of courses, and Rashmi ji has done a quite interesting study when she reached out around 30 odd institutions in India and trying to understand, through a questionnaire process, to understand what are their interest lies, what are the students think, or what are their faculty also think in those type of how can the courses be designed. But the important part is that the emphasis when we were talking to all these courses or the academic institution has been on the practicality of what we talk about, say, doing an evaluation, right? In a sense that you have those basic understanding how to frame it, to how to run a sampling, to how to do. There's a lot of practical knowledge around which the requirement is there. And there is also a market for those type of trained people. So the market is, there is a demand for a certain type of market. There is also a demand for how the courses can be built and how the regulatory framework can work. So all this is a process where we have to engage in. I have to push the agenda, maybe draft those out and take it to people. And Rashmi ji and everybody else is also, all of us is trying to make sure that that is done and there is addressed in some form or the manner at this stage.
Thank you, Aniruddha ji, for those inputs and suggestions. So now that there are no more questions in the chat box, I think we can move towards closing this discussion. So I think the key takeaways from this panel discussion today are to definitely keep working. There are already initiatives like the panel said, but to keep working towards pushing for a national evaluation policy, a regulatory framework, and a competency framework to professionalize the field, to develop robust organizational systems and strategies that facilitate evaluation capacity building, to run customized courses for different set of stakeholders, but also start thinking of it more systematically and addressing the varying needs of different stakeholders in this ecosystem. Another point that was commonly emphasized by all speakers here was to need to develop regional language training materials, especially for India, where we have so many variations, even between states. So to really develop contextualized and regional language material, to develop young evaluators' capacity and sustain that through college level events, competitions, workshops, and correspondingly working towards reworking the JDs and the hiring practices to create more opportunities for youth. And lastly, all of you also sort of spoke about the synergies that are needed and and why academic institutions need to come in to further build this evaluation ecosystem, to build M&E courses, and to bridge this gap between academic training and industry needs. And finally, we also spoke and we also heard about the role that VOPEs, voluntary organizations for professional evaluation, can play in working towards a lot of these objectives that we have in our mind going forward as evaluation practitioners. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Would anyone like to add any last thoughts on the way forward, or any concluding thoughts from any of the speakers? Okay, so I think
just one thing. If there is a last 1 second left, I can add that. So just a pitch to please join EcoI and join the evaluation community of India. There's a group out there. There is a set of website over there. Reach out to Yatin, Rajib ji, me, or Rashmi ji, anybody. Because the more people join, the more we are strengthened and more we can push forward.
I completely support Aniruddha. Still, like, such a big country, but still, if you look at our membership, it's very small.
Okay, on that note, I would also like to thank ECOI for hosting this session, to Global for organizing this enriching evaluation week, and to all the speakers here today to really open up and talk about your learnings and reflections on this topic and in this field. Thank you so much for your time and for your patience, and thank you to all the participants and audience who joined us today.
So, one thing I wanted to say, that please put on your video so that we could have a screenshot for this.
We could have a picture at the end. So if everyone could switch on their, whoever can, please switch on their videos once, and we'll click a picture.
Others, please put on their videos.
Thank you, Mahima, for the excellent coordination.
Yatin, you are taking the screenshot, no?
Yeah, I'm waiting for people to turn on.
Few
more people can turn on.
Yeah.
So can you just remove the spotlight from our video so that I can have more people on one screen?
Okay. Remove spotlight.
All are requested to please put on their videos.
I think you can go to view and click on gallery.
Yeah, gallery. Yeah. So I've done that, and about 15-20 people having their videos on. Yeah, I've taken one screenshot. Yeah, only these many people are turned the video on. So yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.